Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the Tech Exchange podcast. My name is Jamal Robinson, business strategist for cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and analytics. Join me as I speak with thought leaders from all areas of the tech industry. On today's show, I'll have a lead programmer from Intel discuss future career prospects for developers, how to get more women involved across all roles in tech, and her past career as a movie actress and a model who won the prestigious 2012 Miss Queen of India pageant. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Akhila and I'm a software engineer. I work at Intel and I work on cloud platform and open source technology.
That's pretty cool. So of everybody that I've had on the show, you actually have the most interesting background. So what did you do before you were a developer?
I used to work as a model and also as a movie star in Southern Indian movies.
A model and a movie star, and now you're a developer. You have to explain, how did that happen?
For me, the transition was very, actually natural, I guess. As a kid, my family comes from a complete background of science and technology and engineers and doctors. Mm-hmm. So in India, being a software engineer or a developer is not a big deal, you know. It's just like any third person is a software engineer. If you're not one is where you're like, they're like, oh, wait, what do you do in life? So, yeah. So that is pretty much it. And as you can see, I'm quite tall for an Indian woman. Mm-hmm. And once I was walking down at a mall and somebody came up to me and they said, hey, you're so tall, why don't you be a model? And I was like, okay, maybe I should just give it a try. So I did take their card, I did an audition, they liked me. Started walking for all kinds of fashion weeks basically in India.
Okay. And didn't you win a competition or some awards or something like that?
Yeah. So while I was doing that, and all this was happening when I was 17 and 18. Okay. And while I was doing that, I was part of Miss India South.
Miss India South.
Yeah.
That sounds impressive.
Yeah, another pageant, I guess. And that's how I was a part of the pageant, and I won another pageant called Miss Queen of India. So,
Queen of India?
Yeah.
Can I start calling you that?
No,
Queen
please, no.
Okay. That's going to be your new nickname.
Right. No. Actually, a lot of people don't know that, but you've done your research.
Yes. So even the movie aspect, explain how you got into film.
So while I was modeling, again, some directors came up to me and then they asked me if I wanted to audition for roles. But I didn't really see myself as an actress more than anything because, I don't know, I'm just not cut out for it, I guess. But slowly things started to materialize and I started auditioning more and I got into Kannada movie industries. So as you know, in south of India, India itself is really diverse and it has about 34 languages. I might be wrong, but different languages. Okay. And so there are a lot of regional cinemas, and that's how I got into Kannada movie industry. Bangalore is where I'm from, and the language spoken there is Kannada. And then the neighboring states also were like, hey, maybe we should get her to act in our language. So.
Okay. I'm going to reach out to my good friend Jerry Bruckheimer and see if we can get you in the next Transformers or something like that. So we understand the modeling and then the movie career. So help us understand how you got into being a developer and maybe even discuss like your background and education that qualified you for that role.
Right. So like I said, all this modeling was happening. The timeline goes this way. The modeling was happening while I was 16, 17, 18. After I finished my modeling, while I was doing modeling, I got into movies. And simultaneously, I was doing my undergrad in computer science. And while I was doing that, I did some movies. And after that, I think I slowly transitioned into just being a software engineer.
Okay, that sounds good. So for those not familiar with the space, what exactly does a developer and or a software engineer do? And are those terms synonymous, developer, programmer, software engineer?
I want to say it is synonymous to a lot of people, but most of this is all of these titles are created by companies, I guess. Essentially, a person who interacts in the field of computer science is like a programmer, and you'd learn to program things, write a small program to calculate if a number is palindromic, or to find out if it's an odd and even number. So that's what essentially I thought programming was. And then you slowly progress into these titles like a software developer, which makes you believe that you developed software from scratch. But that is entirely true. Yes and no. Depends on circumstances. And then I think the wholesome term for this is software engineer, because computer science is also a field of engineering. So you bring in the software, you engineer all these technologies together with frameworks and all the goodies of front end, and then finally you have something,
Okay. I'm going to call you the queen of software engineering now.
No,
That seems
please
like the
stop.
appropriate term. So I brought you on the show because I get a lot of people that have developer interest that aren't necessarily technical, and they think that, hey, let me start off with Python, or let me get into being a developer. I've heard about the role. It seems pretty cool. So on a day-to-day basis, like, what is the life of a queen development engineer?
Day-to-day basis, let me think about this. So I feel that you just sit in a cube. A lot of people ask me this, though. You just sit in a cube,
Okay.
and then you're connected to really powerful machines via your laptop, and you just write code. So that is pretty much what you do. And all of this happens while you're sipping coffee. So that's your...
Which, what I picked up on when you explained that job is it sounds like you have the ability to work from anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. So that is the one thing that you should really love about software engineering, is that you can practically work from anywhere.
Okay.
I was in Hawaii a couple of weeks ago, and I was working from there for a bit. So
Wow.
yeah, it doesn't really matter where you're from or where you're sitting at. You just need to have good connection to internet. That's all.
Okay, which is a pretty fair ask for most countries. So thinking about the developer space and those looking to get into it. So there's a quote from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics about the forecast for jobs in the future, specifically for programmers. They're expecting to have like an 8% decline over the coming decade. So do you see where the demand for developers is waning off, or where that industry is becoming more saturated? Or if you had somebody that was young looking to get into this space, would you still recommend going forward with development?
Well, I mean, so let's start with this .com boom, right? When that happened, there was like a lot of .coms and all those companies which started with Yahoo.com and Hotmail.com and stuff like that. So it saturated at some point of time, but then there was a new avenue that you went into, right? Some kind of, now let's say right now the buzzword is cloud computing. Everybody wants to be on the cloud. You want to do things on the cloud. Cloud is scalable, highly available, and all those buzzwords, all the good things that they want is all there. But after some point of time, you can actually already see some kind of progression where people are talking about serverless. What is serverless right now? So definitely at some point of time, a good part of computer science development or web development or whatever that is going to get saturated. But there will be new avenues. It's not going to be obsolete, but I think that it is really important for people to invest some time in coding, because that is the future.
Okay. And I'm just going to reiterate that because you made a very elegant point. So a lot of people, they approach the industry and think that I'm going to prepare and get this role and I'll have it until 65. You have to constantly redefine yourself. If you're in the cloud today, maybe edge computing tomorrow. If you're a developer today, it may be whatever tomorrow. So yeah, what I heard from you is don't look for a specific role and expect to keep that forever, but look for the role. Also keep your mind open. Focus on the latest trends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Assessment?
Yeah, you just have to. So when I got into this field, after I finished my undergrad and I had a sufficient time to go around the world and see things and do things, and then
go around the world.
Yeah.
I forgot you're a queen and a developer and a movie star, so we may not all have that, but that's cool.
Yeah, but mostly for myself to go around and see the world and experience the world before I got back to this field again. It was really hard, even for a person who was from the background of computer science as an undergrad. It was really, really hard for me to do my master's because it was just a year and a half, 2 years before I came back to the field, but it had changed significantly. It had progressed so far that I didn't really keep up with it. So it was hard. So initially it is hard, and you have to believe that it's a constant learning phase. You're never going to be too comfortable with whatever you're doing.
Do you have any specific language that you recommend for somebody new to development, or are they all pretty equal?
They are not equal. Definitely not equal. But I can say that as a developer, I feel that Java, a lot of people will not agree with me, and probably they're going to be huffing and puffing as I said this.
Okay.
But I feel Java is a really good language to start off as a new developer, They'll tell you Python is more lightweight and, it's an interpreted language and stuff like that. But Java, I think, has all set of frameworks, and you can actually graduate to being a functional programmer after this. So.
But by no means am I a good developer, but I did start off on Java, and I think that the language, when I think of, not this, and hopefully I don't offend anybody here, but I think of Python, I almost think of it as like a scripting language. Very high level, easy to get into, easy to get out of. But if you want to be a core developer and understand polymorphism and inheritance and stuff like that, seems like Java is the best language. And also it's been around so long, you have so many assets to learn from.
Right, yeah, you said it right. I mean, it is so elegant, and you can really write good coding structures with Java. And if anybody wants to get into it, I think there are some good books, and you can look it up online. And my personal favorite is Head First Java, and I did that and started off all over again.
Okay. Now that sounds great. So let's say somebody is the queen or king of software development. They've gotten done with their movie and music and or modeling career, and now they want to go out to a company. Well, what enterprises or companies or even startups or mom and pop shops should they be looking at? Like what are the best places for a developer to go to work? Or is it company-based, or is it more so industry-based?
I feel it's more so industry-based. You want to really consider what field do you want to get into, what do you identify with. If you identify with social networking, maybe you should try Instagram or you should try Snapchat. If you're more service-oriented and you want to try like Airbnb, I think that's a good place to work. For me, I feel even though I've been on the spotlight so many times, I'm not too familiar with social media. By familiar, I don't like being too much on social media. Okay. But
me either.
Yeah, so somehow Twitter has changed that for me. Not because I go there and post things on Twitter, but for me, I just read a lot of good content that I see online there.
Okay. And for the listeners out there, I'm just going to give you a fair disclosure. She's actually marrying into Twitter because her fiance works at Twitter, so I think she has to say that to drive the stock up.
No, that is not true. So I say this because 2 years ago, I was introduced to Twitter by my fiance, my then boyfriend. And I didn't really like it, but I was like, what is up with this? Why should I be posting something and things like that? But I started following a lot of news channels and information more than anything, like good computer science information and really nerdy jokes, which are funny, you find on Twitter.
Do you have any favorite hashtags or whatever that you follow?
No, not hashtag, but I follow this account called Sad Lonely Server. So they make server jokes, which is pretty funny. And it's hard to do. What can you say about a server? So.
And they've been around for so long, it seems like all the jokes would have been laughed out, but they still have fresh content. That's very impressive.
Right, yeah.
So you mentioned your fiance is at Twitter. When I think of Twitter and Google and companies, maybe even Intel, maybe not, but when I think of these companies and I think of developers, I picture developers sitting back. They have the latest MacBook. They're getting catered food. Maybe somebody's massaging their back while they're programming. Money's just raining from the sky. What are the companies that you can go to work for as a developer and you're treated as a king? Where me having some experience in like older enterprises, I'll just throw a name out there. Actually, I won't throw a name out there so nobody boycotts me. But thinking of some older companies, they don't really value the IT space. It's more so just something that's required in order to keep business running. So maybe a pharmaceutical company wouldn't put as much money into development efforts because that's software. Who are the companies that prioritize developers and essentially treat them like kings and or queens?
I can't really say this for sure as in with absolute knowledge that I've been around there. But from what I hear, a lot of people from Google and Facebook, they say that they really enjoy working there because the overall scope of not just sitting and developing inside a cube or at your workspace, but the whole experience of developing is a good one. You don't really have to actually let's say you get really good food, you get good machines to work on, you're in the company of really high-spirited people who have the right right direction to push you towards, good mentors. But for me, most importantly, two things that matter a lot is good food, because I feel that good food directly hampers your productivity, or, it's directly proportional to your productivity, and a good machine, like a mean laptop.
Yeah. No, I don't eat as much, so I'm not on the food bandwagon, but I definitely think if you're spending 8 to 12 to however many hours on a computer, it has to be top-notch. So all the managers out there, listen, get your developers MacBooks or whatever it is that they want, and they'll be happy and they'll stay with you.
Right. It's just not like a Mac or a Windows machine. Whatever they want, whatever they think if they want to build a machine and they say, hey, I want to use this, people should be able to install all the security things and things like that on it, and you're good to go.
Yeah, so System 76 with Linux, if they want to run it off of a Chromebook, whatever it is, essentially get them what they need. So in that breath, thinking about companies that feed their developers, they clothe their developers with a bunch of swag, they let them smoke weed walking through the office, just pretty much free reins of the company with the high salary.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the public sector, which I typically ask this across technologies, the U.S. government seems like they, one, wouldn't be able to attract these people because of money.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they wouldn't be able to attract these people because of the benefits and the rigorous, or lack of benefits, I should say, and then the rigorous background checks and piss tests and stuff like that most of the developers wouldn't pass.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see in the public sector like them ever being able to compete with a company like Google or Airbnb or Twitter?
No, they don't stand a chance. No.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, no. That is my honest answer, no. Okay. Because a lot of people working in these companies are driven. Why do you think they're driven? Because they're treated like king and queen, and they say that you can do whatever you want. The companies drive you to do things like these. I might be completely wrong. There might be some companies who think that all these, getting really good food or able to smoke weed in your hallways are all hampering the productivity. But bottom line is, you let your people trust your people and let them do what they want. They will give you things that will, help the company.
I definitely agree with that. I actually just recently ran across a quote from Steve Jobs that says, "It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do." And I feel like that level of autonomy over your position is really worth more than money. And when you add money and benefits and the ability to work from home and cutting-edge technology, but then also working on things that fundamentally millions of consumers are using, I mean, that's a really compelling call to action to go work for those companies versus other companies. So makes a lot of sense. A question that I have, and this is my ignorance as a developer, so I would think that, let's say you're an expert Python developer, can you easily jump from, let's say, working on Twitter, which is a social media platform, mm-hmm. to, not that it is, but let's say Alexa was programmed in Python, to mm-hmm. working on Python, and let's say Pfizer had some medical record solution that was in Python? Like, is it just the language that matters, or is it the industry context that matters also? Or
I'd say it's a mix of all of it. Mm-hmm. Language does matter. So if you told me that I was a really good Python developer and you said that I want to go work on another X companies whose backend is in Java and I don't really have any knowledge in Java, it would certainly be harder for me to pick up on the language, the nuances, the framework, everything else that is written in Java. But if it's Python, I'm pretty much going to understand what the concept is with the background information about the company that I'm working with. So it is going to take me some time, but not as much time as opposed to, having a completely different language in a different company.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That's exactly what I was looking for. And maybe if we can even revisit something you were saying earlier. So you're saying in India, primarily most people are, the de facto standard is developers.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, this was back in my oil and gas days, but he said when he was growing up, essentially his parents gave him two options. They said, hey, what do you want to be, an engineer or a doctor? Yeah, it's not really, you don't have any other options outside of that. So one, I'm wondering why that is. And then two, this may be anecdotal, but I'm noticing a lot of people are coming from other countries mm-hmm. to fill these development roles. Mm-hmm. Maybe help us to understand that.
So let me go back to why in India it's either a software engineer or a doctor. So India was plundered by so many kings and queens. Like, they would just raid it over because it had really good resources and stuff like that. Because of which, over a period of time when we got our independence, we were a poor country. we didn't really have much money. And at some point of time, working in a government sector or a public sector company was like a very stable job, This is like back in 1950s.
Okay.
So after that, you slowly, there was the globalization, and slowly people started getting into fields like computer science and predominantly science-dominated domains. And they felt that there's job stability more than anything else. So when your dad or mom tells you that, hey, you have two options, either a doctor or engineer, what she really, really means is, we don't want you to be bankrupt or be homeless. At some point of time, even if you don't have a job, let's say there's a recession again, right? Mm-hmm. Possibly there is going to be one. And
almost guaranteed with the current president.
Yep. And also the stock market is unusually high.
Yeah.
So coming back to the point, so even if there's a recession, you have the basic education to be stable in your life, that you can feed yourself food and get a home. That is pretty much the basic necessity that Indian parents or people from abroad, they want you to do. So when I came here, I came here, and then I was in graduate school, and then I started to realize that there are so many fields that I wasn't even aware of,
Wow.
Yeah, like so many of them, like kinesiology. I was like, what is that? So for me, we were either science or, like a doctor or an engineer. So coming here, we saw there were so many domains. But I have observed that a lot of people who are in different domains also come back to coding or somewhere else, So you might as well get your formal education there. So you're already on the path to doing that, rather than trying to find like a dream and then again coming back to coding because that's not good enough.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because I always try to recommend to people, if you're in the financial industry or you're in the healthcare industry, learn something technical, whether it's an architect or a developer, because that gives you a competitive edge. If you go to Amazon as a programmer, even if you're really good, you may not be in the top 15 percentile.
Right.
You go into the medical industry as a decent programmer, you're probably easily going to rise to the top. So let that technical aspect and ability be a differentiator. Going back to the race portion and thinking a little bit deeper, especially as there's a national conversation about people coming into the country, when I think about tech products, do you find that tech companies are well diverse? And not just diverse because we're in San Francisco. I think it's maybe 30 U.S. Census data is saying that there's 30% Asian and X amount of percentage of other. And typically you walk around a company, you get to see a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. But are you finding that diversity is consistent across executive leadership, across a lot of different roles? Or what's been your experience?
In my experience, I feel that a program in the field of computer science and just like technical, it is pretty diverse. I mean, because I live here in California and I've lived in San Francisco, I see that it is hugely diverse. But I don't know if I can say that confidently with places away from the West Coast or the East Coast,
Like Alabama?
Probably,
okay.
Yeah.
We're both not welcome in Alabama anymore, but our listeners get the point.
Yeah, but what is more troubling is that I feel that I don't really find a lot of software engineers as girls are not really interested in going into the field of computer science, which I think is totally wrong, and they should totally do it because everybody can. And if we have more people, more women here, it's good. It's good for everybody, and then that kind of diversity really matters.
So we actually talked offline about this, and I believe you said that your brother, for his birthday, you gave him a large sum of your high salary at Intel, and he took some of that money, and rather than going out buying the latest iPhone, didn't he buy like a series of computers for a group of women so they can kind of start training themselves?
Right. Yeah, he actually did that. He went to an orphanage in India,
wow.
And he gave them birthday cake and electronics and laptops and things like that. Yeah.
I wish people would give me birthday cakes and computers also, but I don't have guys like your brother around me, so that's pretty cool. Do you find that equally from gender, male to female in India is pretty consistent as far as technical entry?
Right. So what baffles me the most is because a lot of girls are there studying computer science in India, a lot of them. But I don't see a good set of them actually going to work. I really wonder. There are these girls who really want to study and they don't even want to miss a class, Like in college, you want to miss a class because there's a party and then you're like, hey, let's all quit the class and then just let's go. Then the class is not going to happen. And you see these set of girls just sitting there and they're like, no, sorry, we're going to be there to attend the class. And I've seen a lot of them in my, I've come across a lot of them in my class itself who did not actually take up jobs even though they were offered one, or ended up quitting way too soon, who were really capable and did really good job at computer science and programming. So I'm really surprised about that.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're on this topic because I know right now there's these hashtag girls who code and there's a lot of efforts to get women involved, but I just wonder, in execution, does that lead to more women actually entering the industry versus just having exposure? And I'm sure there's some uptick, but is it a significant uptick? Because being an African American, I've seen where there's different social programs for people of color or various minorities, but it doesn't always translate into actually changing numbers, I guess the original intent that these programs were developed for. So I do kind of wonder if the individuals creating the program, if they don't get, almost to your point, if they don't get the right people involved, like if I'm making a program for women who code, but I'm a guy and I don't know much about women and why they typically don't enter into coding, I could set up a program, I check a box, I spend whatever amount of money, women come in, but it doesn't translate into that. So do you have any ideas maybe? Do we just need more women in leadership? Or
I think we need more women in leadership. More than that, we need to have women who actually listen to us, because some of them are there in the field of tech and they're at really high level and they're just killing it out there. They're just doing everything right and they're breaking the glass ceiling and all that. But there is no connect, there is no connect between people who are already here at a level where they want to enter the field and people who are already up there doing really awesome things. And there's a very, very, I feel, personally, that's what I feel. I feel like there's a very wide gap and they're not actually able to connect to people who want to enter the field. So
yeah, no, I've seen something like that also where if I want to enter into a field and I see that there's no other people that look like me in that field, I'm probably going to be a bit hesitant because at the end of the day, those things still matter, whether I have my PhD or not, or if I enter into that field but I don't see anybody in the role that I want, I'm going to set my aspirations a little bit lower. So I do think getting women in leadership roles, letting them set policies, whether we're talking tech companies or talking on Capitol Hill, it would be significantly better. So
I would want to say leadership roles. And also roles as a project technical lead or a principal engineer. I don't see a lot of women in those kind of roles, A lot of times the diversity and all this gender gap is shifted to women into a leadership role. I don't want to see more women in leadership roles. I know women can do really good job in leadership and multitasking and being a manager and all that. What about a project lead? What about a technical lead? What about a principal engineer? Why don't I see women in those roles, You don't see them in those roles because it is dominated by men. It is really hard for women to actually... There's nothing wrong with, having said that, there's nothing wrong with it being dominated by men. But I need to see a PTL who is a woman and I can approach her and talk to her about it because I can identify with her. All of us start as a software engineer. At somewhere down the line, we drift off into, managerial skills and all that. But I don't want to see that.
Yeah, no, I agree. My understanding of what you said is essentially we don't just need one extreme to the other extreme, which is no women in the industry and then they shoot straight to leadership. We need that to be more homogenous because if we put a woman CEO, hypothetically, in front of Intel, not everybody's talking to the CEO. Right. So those women underneath her may not have that as somebody that's approachable to them that they can talk to. Yes. So we need them at every level because they're capable of doing the same jobs and hopefully we're paying them the same amount of money. Back to what you're saying about people coming into the country and the parents kind of starting them off as engineers, developers, or some type of technical role that'll bring a lot of money. Right now there's a national conversation about, or stimulated from our president, about kind of Americans being prioritized first for jobs. I know we have a lot of people over here that are being sponsored on visas, but if I listen to the tech companies talk, they say, hey, we just can't find these jobs in America. The schools are not producing the talent that can execute these jobs. We need people coming from other countries, not just from the diversity aspect, the diversity of opinions, but these people can do their jobs. not saying Americans can't, but it's just Americans are not producing the level of engineering and quality programming that we can execute at a mass scale. Somebody else might say, no, these tech companies are just looking to get people that they can sponsor their visas, pay them lower, and have them almost like a new form of slave trade. Somebody else might say, no, we are superior. We come from this country. Our education systems are better. We go year round. So when our kids are 18, they are the equivalent of your kids who are a junior in college with all the additional schooling. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I feel the education system in India versus education system in USA is completely different. I mean, for me, finishing my undergrad in India and coming to grad studies in USA, it was a totally different culture for me. I could choose my classes, I could choose my professors based on classes and things like that. With India, there's like a structured program. You want to be an engineer, you want to be a computer science engineer, you do this. You take like 6 classes a day, you give like 5 exams a week and stuff like that. It is hard. It is very hard. And not to tell you the amount of pressure that you have from your parents and your peers and society and things like that. So it is already ingrained in us to do this, do A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E. So when you come here with the education system in the US, it gives you the time to think and choose your classes, make wise decisions, do things that you like to do, but also there needs to be a little of practicality in it. For example, I was in the field of modeling and acting. A lot of people come and ask me, why did you change from, why the sudden transition from modeling to computer science? I tell that I can tell you with all honesty that in my country, the film industry is a sexist one, and I don't like.
In America too.
Yeah, I don't like being treated that way. I'm far too of a feminist for me to be treated that way by anybody, for that matter. So the only thing at that point of time that I could change in my life is me, the path that I was taking. I'm not this really big person or anybody to go and change the industry. That is not my purpose in this world. My purpose in this world is very small, and I want to be happy and not be treated like that. So that's why I changed my field of, the field that I was working in. The same way in America, if you want to have the American dream or you want to have jobs in the future, technology is going to be your answer. You can't complain about it. You can't say that, oh, my job is being taken away by a person like an immigrant like me. I've come here legally. I have studied. I have worked hard. I'm not here to take anybody's job. I'm just taking whatever is available. If people from this country really feel like immigrants are doing all this, then they should do something about it. You should really include science and technology at the very basic level. Technology is the future. Coding is the future. Right now, I'm going to go back home to India, and I've been thinking about getting ties for my niece, my nephews. You know what I'm going to get them? Obviously, I'm going to get them ties which will teach them how to code. Because
pretty cool.
It is happening here in Palo Alto, in schools in Palo Alto and Menlo Park. Kids are being taught coding at a very young age, which is very vital. You need to teach them. It's like science and maths. If people don't realize that you have to teach them coding like science and maths, there's nothing much you can do, right?
Yeah. No, I believe the CEO or founder that created the Raspberry Pi, that was his intention also.
Yeah.
Let me get a $35 board where somebody can sit there, they can program with it. The technology is accessible from a cost standpoint because $35 is not a big deal in America, but you have some other countries.
It is a very big deal in my country.
Right.
$35 is a very huge amount. That's growing up as a kid for me.
Yeah. So making technology more accessible. And I mean, I don't know what the U.S. Department of Education is doing, but I do agree. It should be fundamental. Kids should, day one, as soon as they can walk, essentially, put them in front of a computer, let them program, let them have a technical angle, because I do think that is a future, and that gives them the best chance. And yeah, we can't complain on one hand if we can't fill these roles, but then on the other hand, we get mad when other people come in that do fill the role.
Yeah.
Because what might happen the opposite, which seems a little bit worse, is if these companies just leave the country and say, okay, we can't find the talent over here, you don't let us bring talent, we'll go do business overseas.
Right, and you don't want that because at some point of time, they're going to be far more profitable because the currency exchange at different countries is very different. So if the same company comes to India, I'm not going to be paid as much as I'm being paid now. That is the harsh reality. And you don't really want these companies to leave this country,
Yeah, definitely. So as we wrap up today, you've graced us with your experience and your background and a lot of interesting thoughts. But for people that want to get into the developer space, what do you think is the best way for them to advance their skills? Or where can they go more to learn about this space or how to program or anything?
Okay, so I'm gonna relate this because I came back to coding after 2 years.
Okay.
So I started off going surfing websites to do like really simple programs. Like you won't even believe things that I'm gonna say. Things like how to find a number in an array. Like a list of numbers is given and find out if that number exists in a list of numbers and things like that. Like really basic stuff, like ABC of programming. So I started from there. So you should essentially there are some sites where they have like a list of questions and you can solve them and then you win points and things like that. So that is really good. And more than anything, you should code because a lot of people that I talk to tell me that they want to read a language before they actually get into programming. That never works. That almost never works. It is 100% hands-on.
Yeah, on-the-job training. So hands-on keyboard, go out there to various websites that can give you little tutorials. There's a wealth of sites like Udemy now or Udacity that basically give programs to train. They're for free.
Yeah.
A lot of these programs are given by engineers like Akhila or given by engineers at Google that are software developers and PhDs and all these other things. Wealth of information out there, and even earlier you alluded to your favorite book series. As far as conferences, are any conferences you recommend going to or checking out?
I'm not sure about conferences because I've not done a lot of them, but I know there's an app called Meetup where you can go and meet up with people. I went to this thing called Female Founders and Female Programmers.
Okay.
And it was in San Francisco, and it was fun. I got to meet a different section of people that I don't normally hang out with, and it was really good night. I went and networked with them. I'm in touch with a few of them. We keep on bouncing off ideas of each other, so it was pretty cool.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, there are a lot of meetup groups that around your city that you can find where people actually go to a cafe and learn to code. So programming is fun if you have other people around you so that you don't really feel sad. And so...
Okay. Yeah. And let me even second that meetup. I've been to meetups myself. 2 most recent ones. I went to the augmented reality and virtual reality meetup. Didn't know anything about it. Learned quite a lot of interesting things. Got more interested in that space. The second to last meetup was a meetup about using artificial intelligence on top of the blockchain. Different things that startup companies were looking to get into and different business ideas. And it was a pretty interesting thing to go out and talk to people that you don't necessarily talk to that came, like some of these people came from Goldman Sachs and they got interested in technology, and next thing you know, they started their own company. And let me say this, because we live in essentially the tech mecca. If you're out in Dallas, Texas, or you're out in Omaha, Nebraska, and you can't find a meetup, create your own. I mean, it's free to create, at least I think it's free to create a meetup. But create your meetup and have people join. If you have 5 or 6 people physically there, that's all you need. And you guys can kind of band together and learn together.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's also people that, I forgot what the app was called, but a very successful app developed by 6 or 7 people that never met each other in real life. One guy's in China, one guy's in India, one guy's in somewhere in Africa. So even with the internet now, it's not to say that the people you meet need to be physically in your presence, although I do think that's better, but definitely a lot of options. So outside of yourself, are there any kind of thought leaders that young women could look up to, or developers should look at, or just people should follow in general?
I don't know if there are any particular developers that I mean, my fiance is a really good one, so I really look up to him.
You want to give his Twitter handle a shout out?
Okay. His name is Alankrit Chona. It's a complicated name, but...
Please spell that, because...
So it's A as in alpha. Let me just say it out. ALANKRITCHONA.
How do you pronounce it?
Alankrit Chona.
Alankrit Chona. You just got the bump from my podcast and the plug. You're going to have like 5 million followers. Pretty cool. So last question, I ask this to all my guests. If I speak to you again 12 months from now, where do you foresee yourself at in this space? Are you still a developer? Or now are you running your own movie company? Are you out SpaceX? You're on your way to Mars? What's going on with you in the next 12 months?
Let's see. In 12 months, maybe I'd want to start my own company at a small scale, just me and maybe another person. I'm not sure. But that is somewhere that I'm looking forward to move towards so that I get into a good space and get some startup funding,
Okay. No, and this, New York, and maybe Austin, top 3 places to get funding. So I always think don't do stuff on your own money, do it on other people's. So it sounds pretty smart. Last question, if people want to go and follow you and find out more about you, where are the best places to get in contact with you or see what you're up to?
Twitter.
Twitter, what's your handle?
Beyond_AK.
Beyond_AK? Like AK-47?
Yes.
Okay. So once again, I want to thank Akhila for coming on our show. It's not very often that we get a celebrity on here and a developer all rolled into one, but we lucked up today. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Good luck with the fiancé and the marriage in the future, and also good luck with that company. You can follow her on Beyond_AK. You have my information on LinkedIn and Twitter. Feel free to reach out to me. Thanks, everyone, for listening. You all have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Jamal, for having me, and I hope everybody has fun listening to this. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Tech Exchange with Jamal Robinson. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can reach out on LinkedIn, Medium, where I post my latest articles, or Twitter at JamalRobinson84. That's Jamal, Jamal, Robinson84. Until next time, take care.